Is your second working set actually more stimulating than your first? Most lifters don't even think about this, but the answer is yes. Let me explain why. So before we get into working sets, let's quickly go over warm sets because I feel these are vastly overlooked. Now, when you're doing your warm sets, remember these absolutely matter. These are strategic motor pattern rehearsals. They're what let your body groove into the mechanics and get comfortable with the range of motion and basically remind the nervous system about the movement that you're about to load. But here's the difference. Because the load is light, you're not fully recruiting the higher threshold motor units you need once the weight gets heavy. These warm-ups prime the movement pattern, but they don't replicate the demand of a true working set. So now let's talk about your first working set. I like to call this learning under load. So once you put on your working set weight, everything changes. Even though your brain and body already know the movement pattern, the heavier load calls in stabilizers, synergists, and bar path corrections that aren't really challenged in the warm-ups. The first set is the real stimulus, but it's also your nervous system learning how to control the heavier weight through the exact same motor pattern. Now let's get into your second working set, which is going to be a cleaner, more efficient stimulus. You see, by the second working set, your body has already adapted to the heavier load. The nervous system knows exactly what it has to fire and how to coordinate it. Your recruitment's going to be sharper, your technique's going to be smoother, and you're going to be putting a lot more of your effort into the target muscles instead of just figuring out the lift. That's why the second set often feels more stimulating, not because the load changed, but because your execution under that load got a lot more efficient. See, your nervous system now knows what it has to do in terms of stabilization and form as well as biomechanics with that heavier load. So now again, that second set becomes more efficient. That's why most lifters don't need 4 or 5 sets. Typically, when they do this, it's because they're doing sets that really aren't that stimulative because their execution and form is off. See, 2 to 3 really well executed working sets usually strike the best balance between stimulation and fatigue. So, is that second set more stimulating than the first? Absolutely. Remember, your warm-up sets rehearse the pattern. The first working set teaches you how that pattern feels under load, and the second working set is where the nervous system and muscles really sync up. That's why it usually feels sharper and more productive. So remember, your warm-up set is your neurological blueprint behind the mechanics of that exercise. Your first working set is your brain and body adapting to the heavier load with those same mechanics. And then your second working set is the most stimulative set because the rehearsal's already done. Now it's time to perform. Your brain and body know exactly what's demanded to get the most out of that muscle during that movement.